Chioma was an only child, cherished but often left to her own devices, as her parents juggled their thriving businesses. On her 7th birthday, they surprised her with a doll, a porcelain figure dressed in a flowing blue gown, golden locks cascading down its shoulders, and piercing glassy eyes that seemed almost alive. Chioma named her new companion Jezzy Babe. Her parents, always busy, never questioned where the doll came from. They had picked it up from an antique shop without much thought. To them, it was just a toy. But to Chioma, Jezzy Babe was special. At first, she treated the doll like a treasured friend, speaking to it, dressing it up, and keeping it by her side at all times. But soon, something changed. Chioma began talking to herself at odd hours, her soft voice drifting through the house even in the dead of night. At first, her parents dismissed it as harmless, a sign of their daughter's creativity. Even when she started whispering to Jezzy Babe during meals, in the bathroom, and when alone in her room, they brushed it off. But what they didn't know was that Jezzy Babe wasn't just a doll. She was a vessel, a conduit for an ancient, malevolent spirit bent on sowing chaos and destruction. One evening, Jezzy Babe spoke, but only Chioma could hear. "Your daddy has too many boring papers. Let's make his life more fun. Go rip them up." Chioma obeyed without hesitation. She crept into her father's study and shredded every document she could find: contracts, financial records, even cherished photographs. When her father, David, returned home and saw the destruction, he was furious. But when he looked into Chioma's wide, innocent eyes, he couldn't bring himself to punish her. He convinced himself it was just a childish prank. But deep down, a sense of unease crept in. Chioma's odd behavior escalated. She became aggressive at school, picking fights and refusing to follow instructions. Her once sweet nature turned hostile. Complaints poured in, but her parents, distracted by work, dismissed them. One night, Chioma's mother, Angela, heard laughter coming from her daughter's room. When she peeked inside, she saw Chioma sitting cross-legged on the floor, facing Jezzy Babe. Chioma stopped laughing abruptly. Slowly, she turned her head to stare at her mother. "You shouldn't be here, Mommy. Jezzy Babe doesn't like you." Angela felt a chill run down her spine, but she dismissed it as exhaustion. The next morning, she found claw-like scratches on the walls of Chioma's room. The doll sat propped up on the bed, its painted smile somehow more sinister than before. After years of struggling to conceive again, Angela finally became pregnant. She and her husband were overjoyed. But when they shared the news with Chioma, she simply frowned. "I don't need another sibling," she said. "Jezzy Babe is the only sister I want." She walked out, leaving her parents dumbfounded. The next day, Angela suffered a miscarriage. David's business was failing. His last hope rested on an important contract, one that could save everything. He spent days perfecting it, ready for a crucial meeting. That morning, as he showered, Jezzy Babe whispered again, "Take the papers from Daddy's bag. He doesn't need them." Chioma obeyed. She removed the documents and hid them under her bed. At the office, David's heart sank when he realized his contract was missing. He tried to explain, but the clients were unimpressed. They walked away. His last chance was gone. Back home, he broke down in tears, unaware of the sinister force pulling the strings behind his daughter's behavior's mouth. That Sunday, Auntie Grace arrived unannounced. Angela's younger sister was a prayer warrior, deeply rooted in faith and spiritual discernment. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. "Angela, there is something wrong in this house." Angela laughed nervously. "Come on, Grace, you just got here. Rest before you start with all this spiritual warrior talk." But Grace's unease only grew when she saw Chioma. Chioma had always adored her Auntie Grace. But that day, she stopped in her tracks, her gaze shifting toward the doll. "Don't hug her," the doll's voice echoed in Chioma's mind. "She is not our friend." Chioma turned away. "I don't want to hug you." Silence filled the room. Grace's eyes darkened. She turned to Angela. "That doll is not a toy. It is a vessel of darkness. Look at what it has done to your child, your home." Angela scoffed. "Grace, it's just a doll. You're overreacting." Grace shook her head. "Then explain why your daughter fights at school, why your husband is losing everything, why she refuses to greet me, her favorite aunt. Can't you see? This doll is destroying your family." David, still grieving his lost deal, finally looked at the doll with suspicion. But before he could reach for it, Chioma clutched it tightly. "No, Jezzy Babe loves me. She's my only friend." Chioma cried, running to her room and slamming the door shut. That night, Grace knelt in prayer, asking God to expose the evil in the house. Angela tossed and turned in bed, an uneasy feeling compelling her to check on her daughter. When she opened Chioma's door, her heart stopped. Chioma sat cross-legged on her bed, clutching Jezzy Babe in one hand and a razor blade in the other. Her face was eerily calm. "What are you doing, Chioma?" Angela's voice trembled. No response. The doll's unseen voice urged, "Do it, Chioma. I need to see your blood. We're friends, aren't we?" Angela screamed. The sound jolted Chioma from her trance. The razor fell from her hands. David and Grace rushed in. Chioma, shaking, finally whispered, "Jezzy Babe told me to. She said she wanted my blood." The room fell silent. Under Auntie Grace's firm yet gentle gaze, Chioma finally confessed. She had been obeying the doll's whispers all along, tearing up her father's documents, hiding his contract, fighting at school. Jezzy Babe had isolated her, filling her mind with dark thoughts. Angela and David collapsed in tears, guilt crushing them. Grace stood tall. "This doll is not a toy. It is a demon, and we must act now." Grace grabbed the doll. Chioma screamed, clinging to it. "You cannot have her." A chilling voice erupted from the doll. Grace was unshaken. She sprinkled holy water on it, praying aloud. The air grew cold, heavy with an oppressive force. The doll vibrated violently, its glassy eyes glowing red. With one final, piercing shriek, it shattered into pieces. The darkness lifted. Chioma collapsed into her father's arms, exhausted but finally free. That night, the family prayed together, vowing to never neglect their faith again. They learned the hard way that a home without prayer and unity is vulnerable to darkness. As for Jezzy Babe, what remained of her was buried far away, never to haunt another soul again. Prayer is a shield. Never neglect it. Parents must be present. Neglect creates openings for darkness. Pay attention to warning signs. Unusual behavior should never be ignored. Faith is power. Spiritual vigilance can protect your family from unseen dangers. Stay prayerful. Stay united. See you in my next story. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.